All right. I don't really have much time to waste because I'm just excited for the conversation, and I'm excited for a new friend on here that's joining me today, Brian Peterson, coming from just outside of Phoenix. And today we're going to talk UTMB, and we're going to talk a lot about UTMB because we both love it. We both have things that we don't love about it, but in the end, like we're here for it. We're supporters of it. We're supporters of the community. I met Brian just on Instagram, Wolfrunner. I'll put that in the show notes below. And then I also heard him on Troy Meadows' podcast, Midpacker Pod. And if you want to get to know my guest today on a more personal level, I'm going to put that in the show notes as well. Please go listen. I love Troy. I love how personal he is. And with today's podcast, just get to know my guest today on a personal level there. But today, Brian, if you're good with it, let's just start talking about UTMB. Is that good?
I'm all for it. Let's go.
Awesome. Okay, here we go. Let's just come out of the gates safe and easy, and let's talk about some things that we have loved about UTMB, like a favorite moment. Is there, when we think about UTMB, the main event in Chamonix, is there like a particular thing that sticks out, that like endearing to you or fond to you, that makes you look forward to UTMB week because of that memory?
Absolutely. So it brings me back every year to the Billy Yang UTMB Nike Trail Team YouTube video.
That was a deep cut. Yeah, good call. I forgot about that. That's so good.
On me.
David Laney?
Absolutely. Young Zach Miller with the little trail mullet on.
CCC, yeah.
Yeah, Tim Tollefson. I mean, it was Sally McRae. You had everybody from that era. And the theme music was grand. And, it's something you could watch year after year to get excited for UTMB, and it kind of now is a little nostalgic because it kind of shows trail running at a time when it was just on the precipice of where it's at now with this, big launch and, big branding and everything else. So yeah, that's what I love. That's my first impression.
Oh, dude, if trail running could be frozen in time at that, that's good. If I had thought about that, that would absolutely have been my memory. I didn't even think about that. First off, in my mind, it lives as a David Laney film for some reason, even more than a Zach Miller, even though I think that was part of the era that the world is being introduced to Zach. But just the entirety of like the fond feelings of that, seeing, that was probably my introduction to UTMB.
Yeah.
Getting to feel proud of America in some ways, like, oh man, we went there, we went to France and did something, Zach did that and David Laney did that. I mean, it's cool. Good call. Mine is it's a low hanging fruit, but it was last year's Jim Walmsley win. I went to UTMB because I wanted to have a front row seat to the men, American men getting the title that I think they've long deserved, but not been able to unlock in any way. So I guess then therefore they don't deserve it. But last year, me and a couple buddies went, and, I just wanted to see Jim cross. I mean, I knew Zach would be there. I mean, Tim Tollefson was there. There was a lot of greats, and Dakota Jones was there to get the CCC. Can't remember where he finished, if he was top 10 or something like that. It was just cool to see Americans doing a good job there. And then when the race started and Zach and Jim were actually fighting for it, Zach's always in the running, and he always, kind of burns out to some degree. And that's what I love about him. But that they were in the running together, like for that was just, it was great for me. Like I'm going to try and go back. I think I'm going to be able to go to Chamonix for one night this year. And just because I want to see the start and finish, see who gets it. I'm rooting for Jim again. So that's mine. Low hanging fruit. That's an easy one. What were your impressions, consuming the content on Jim getting that victory? How'd that one feel for you?
It gave me chills because I think number two behind the Bill Yang video was the men's storyline of every year coming up short.
Yeah.
It was kind of like being a Cubs fan, right? Like, when are they going to break the curse and get the World Series?
Yeah.
And I mean, you had Billy Yang go out there trying to make a film about Zach for 4 or 5 years. And it was good to see it all come to an end. And, Jim Walmsley is a deserving first American male champion for the United States. So that was super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, that was good. I mean, there's so much about UTMB though, like, especially for us, if I may speak on your behalf, who kind of are very fond of not only the elite version, but also the dirtbag version of the sport. And, it seems like there's I don't want to say a divide, but maybe that's an okay word. I'm interested in your take on that. But between like just letting ourselves love UTMB and feeling like we can't like fly the UTMB flag at the same time, I guess. What are your impressions or even thoughts on that idea? Like, do you feel like you can't fly the UTMB flag, in certain conversations, or have you had any bad conversations? What are your overall sort of like experiences around this of like genuinely liking UTMB, but also loving the dirtbag version that didn't like what happened, up in Canada and all that stuff?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm unapologetically a big fanboy of the Chamonix UTMB experience, and that's,
Yeah.
again, we always conflate UTMB to this one race. There's other UTMB races as well, but
Sure.
Chamonix is the crown jewel. It's the, anointed championship of the 100 miler, the 100K, the 50K. I think we have to unpack UTMB too. It's not just one race. I mean, it's
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
the way I kind of think about it is it would be like if we had Western States, Black Canyon, and Mammoth Trail Fest all in
Ooh.
one week. That's
Oh.
literally what the
Oh, good
UTMB
call.
fairly represents. And so
Yeah.
we kind of sell it short when we just think of it as
Mm,
UTMB and talk about it like it's one race. I mean, what they're doing over there is incredible.
yeah. And to a conversation we were having offline about my thoughts on comparing Western states and UTMB just in terms of like creating so much demand in the sport. When you put it that way, it's like, oh yeah, it's hard to compare. Like, oh, I think of like, oh, Western states is kind of our version of UTMB, and UTMB is France's version of Western states. You're
Right.
exactly right. Gosh, the scope of that event and the multi-day. I mean, just as an operation, it's massive. But you're exactly right. We have to probably combine 3 American races, like you said, into one to get that
And probably a 200
scope.
miler because they have the PTL, which is a
Oh
300-kilometer race. So, I mean, there you go.
yeah,
They basically give us everything that the United States has, spread out over a whole year.
yeah, yeah. I mean, one thing that you and I connect on is that we're fans. I think, you probably go deeper on the stats level. I'm more of just like a kind of like a I don't say surface level because I can dig down a little bit, but I'm like a kind of like a feelings guy in the thing. Like, I just want to see my American. Like, that feels good. It felt good to see my Texas Rangers finally get a World Series. Like, but I didn't know the stats like I did when I was a kid of all the players. But I'm a diehard fan. Like, I come from a college football town in West Texas where you obsess over your team unless they suck. The one thing I love about Texas Tech fans is that if they suck, you don't go to the game. I'm not that kind of fan. Like,
Uh,
I don't want to give them money. They don't deserve my money until they turn some things around in their program. Anyway, point being, like, so then I bring some of that to trail. And so when I was at UTMB last year, I thought, man, I've never been. I can't wait. Like, that finish line on pictures looks enormous, and it looks like
right.
there's tons of people, and there indeed are a lot of people, but also that's wide angle camera lenses. Those roads are very narrow, and so what's
Mm.
awesome is that like you can go see a decent band in a room that's not very big and it's slammed, and that's a really great feeling. Whereas 10x the audience in a room that's 100x the size feels like a lame audience. So they just nail it. They pack it in there. It feels so good. So I thought, hey, I'm going to need to get to the finish line really early for Jim coming in. Once we saw that it was going to be Jim, and I got there 4 hours early, like stoked. And I even stood in the sun, like, and I had one ear in, like I was total like college football guy, listening to talk radio in the stands, watching my team, listening to Corinne and Dylan, and I was the only one there. No exaggeration. The only people that were there also were people watching other finishers from other distances at the same time. So I was standing there really alone for 3.5 hours, more or less. There was some people coming in and out, and I was shocked. And then in the final 30 minutes, after being there for 3.5 hours, I was moved out of the way because they had to bring in media. And so then I got a place I could have got if I had just showed up 15 minutes early. Point
Yeah.
being, what's your take? What's from your, as a sports fan yourself, beyond trail, what's your take on our sport, UTMB, as a spectator sport? Like, that was a long monologue on my end to get us there, but like, what's your read and take on that?
Yeah, man. I was playing with this a little bit when we jumped into the topics, and yeah, I'm a big sports guy outside of trail running. Come from a basketball, baseball background.
Yeah.
Did fantasy sports, so really, I go all in on sports. Um, And just the sentence I summed it up with is like, in sports, the product is the sport. In
Mm,
running, the product is the gear. And so I
mm,
don't think running
mm.
sells fandom, it sells gear,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
in baseball, basketball, what they sell is tickets to go to the game. They sell
Yeah.
your attention span to watch it on TV, which then they sell marketing and advertising ad space. But
Yeah.
running, the product isn't actually the sport. It's just the gear to go participate in the sport. So it makes sense why you show up there 4 hours early and there's nobody there.
Mm. Do you think that, I mean, so I was at here in Copenhagen, I got to watch Ironman Copenhagen, which was just a really fun, eye-opening thing. Like it actually made me optimistic about the Ironman's involvement with UTMB because there was just a lot of joy and on a surface level, just feels good to be happy. And I saw a lot of that here. But there was also a grandstand, and I know that at Western States there's a grandstand. I thought there'd be a grandstand at Chamonix. I guess I just wanted one. There's not room for it. Do you think our sport could get to the point where the product is the event? And I wish I came up with how you just worded that. That was brilliant. That the product is the gear, not the how'd you say it? The event itself, or the people out running.
Right. It's
Do you
not, yeah, the product isn't the sport, it's the gear, right?
can we turn that corner? Do you think we'll turn that corner? Not do you want to, but do you
Um,
think we would?
yeah, but I think a lot of the maybe the talking heads or the important people in the sport right now are kind of against shaping the sport into a way that's consumable like an Ironman, right? So Ironman has transitions where you can go and actually kind of see these guys and gals come
Mm,
in and out of transitions, right? I think the sport's easier to consume. It's on road courses where you get helicopter views. You can really package it in a way
mm-hmm.
that can be presented as a product to watch, either live there on the ground or on
Yeah.
TV. And you hear a lot of times when you talk about trail running in the Olympics, a lot of people are against it because it has to be too contrived as a course. And it's like that's
Mm,
going to be the very limiting factors. Are we going to accept trail running in a contrived environment where it can be consumed as a product, or are we just going to say, no, we don't want that?
hmm. What changes do you think we would need to make? So as I was thinking through it today, I thought the constraints are our trails are single track. So even if we had an impeccable Starlink every 100 meters, there's still the ability to cover the runner because of you're on single track. So they can't be on a bike that often. So there's some very obvious constraints. What do you think UTMB specifically, because that's where the world watches, what could they do different that you think would make us more interested to watch the coverage, even beyond just the diehards? We'll watch crappy pixelated coverage, right? And
Right.
update I run far every few seconds Twitter. What do you think we could do better?
Well, for UTMB specific, you got to have a 24-hour live stream. I
Hmm.
can't stand that we are still cutting away during the midnight hours where I want to watch it, and it's basically,
Mm,
it's nothing. It's still cams, no commentators, right? Like maybe this year they're going to do something like that, but I mean,
yeah.
that would be the first step for UTMB specific. But as far as building out a course, I think we're distance limited, so we're going to have to look at something maybe a little bit shorter in
Hmm.
distance, and then maybe a course that has multiple lollipops where you're going to go out and do a circle and come back to the same spot and then go out and do another unique circle. So you're building almost like a flower, which is how I've
Mm,
heard it represented.
yeah.
So we'll see.
Does that give a lot of energy to that spot? Is that why you would do that?
Yeah.
Because you could be at any point in that race and you might be coming through there. So that feels like a lot of energy. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, I think mountain biking did something similar to this. I was
Mm,
listening to a podcast. I think Debo was on with somebody from I'm not going to remember it specifically now, but he's one of the ones spearheading kind of the Olympic inclusion or bid for trail running, and he was talking about how this course works, where it's like flower petals, and so you have
mm,
one staging area where everything's going to continue to come back to, but for the competitors, you're not just doing the same loop, so you're getting a
mm,
unique course as you build it out, but always coming back to the same spot, maybe
mm.
every 5 to 10K.
I like that. I had actually sort of like backed my way into that. There's a backyard that I'm looking to put on in northern Utah, but it wasn't for that purpose. But I was just thinking, like, hey, what if a new thing that we could do in a backyard would be three separate loops, like three different loops. Pick whichever loop you want. They are all the backyard appropriate backyard distance. So yeah, like that flower thing, I thought, well, that would just be fun. Like, what if that could help us go further if it was just like you could do a different one? Anyway, it's a
Right.
cheat, but it would just be fun. Okay, what about this? Do you remember when you were a kid? Did you ever watch the Wide World of Sports on Saturday morning?
Yep.
Okay, I mean, I know they did like some Ironman. I think they did like Kona, and I think that's
Mhm.
probably, if I recall from Born to Run, maybe they did some Leadville even once on that. But
And I think Western States was on there as well. So
oh,
yeah,
really? Okay, I
I
mean,
think
so
so. Yeah.
I'm not charting new territory here, but where's that at now? I think like, to get the crew out on course and just do a badass 30-minute, review. I mean, it's expensive to get them in cameras, but just like, it's okay if it comes out the next day or whatever. Or I guess, okay, how long is too long away, far away for that to work? So let's say UTMB camera crew on the main event, incredible 30-minute, like riveting 30-minute coverage. How long is too long to wait for that 30-minute coverage to come out?
Oh, I think you could do it a week later,
Hmm.
especially if you're talking about trying to capture just a casual fan or just somebody
Mm.
who's watching TV
Oh yeah.
Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Because when I watched Ironman Kona, it didn't even dawn to me that like this wasn't actually happening live. You know what I mean? Like when I
Oh yeah.
reflect back to my viewing experience, I wasn't even that big of a fan to know that like I could have probably just found the results somewhere. You know,
Yeah.
I was riveted watching it what I considered live at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I like that. For me, it'd be like a week later because I'm just consuming so much content on trail. Like that would feel like forever. But you're right. Probably like in that bell curve, like 85% of the people within that curve would probably be like stoked and not a big deal to
Right.
wait 7 days. But I do like that because there's, to me, that feels like the balance between like we're still getting that 100 miles or that 106 miles, which is so cool. But to the average 85% of the audience, 92% of the audience that isn't going to consume that much continuous media, a really amazing 30 minutes maybe could be a good solution on the other side of that. I don't know.
Yeah, because it gives you time to build out true storylines. And
Mm.
you know what Iron Man did great, what Kona did was you always had them featuring, you know, the dad that was doing his paralyzed son. You know, he was towing
Oh,
him in a raft, and he was doing the bike ride, and then running him in a
mm.
jogger. You know, and like those
Yeah.
storylines take time to develop. So I mean, but that's what made me teary eyed at the end of these things. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for Trail to figure out how to solve that puzzle.
Yeah. Well, it feels like low hanging fruit. Like here, I mean, we're just a couple guys. You know what I mean? Uh, I wonder why. I don't know. I don't know. I like the version that we're getting, and I want to say kudos to Jameel and Billy and all the people who are trying to come up with new coverage. When you said historically UTMB has not covered that overnight, maybe this year they might. My initial thought was like, hey, every year it is getting like markedly better. Like there's effort. It's still, in my opinion, a long ways away, but they're on their path to that. But it feels like the version that they have like lionized or epitomized, like the thing that we're going toward is the perfect continuous 24, 36-hour nonstop coverage. And that just feels like it has a shelf life to it to me. I don't know how
Right.
long that can last and who all's going to consume on that level for that long.
I think it definitely has a low ceiling. I think you're always going to have kind of your diehards in that because it creates kind of like that Joe Rogan, you know, YouTube
Mm.
chat room where they're there actually for the community of the chat room more so than,
Whoa,
or
good
50
call.
50, 50
Yeah.
50, right? Like they want to participate in the commentary and cheering people on, you know, so I think that will
Mm.
always survive or need to be a feature of these live streams. But you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got a low ceiling. You're not going to see 2 million people tune in to watch the live stream.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. During Cocodona this last year, this was the first year I actually jumped on the chat. It always been just kind of like the thing off to the side or whatever. But I hopped onto my computer. Usually I'm on my phone and this chat thing pops up and I see this going and all of a sudden I'm engaging. And you're right. That is a part of the fun. As the coverage is like there, but it almost starts to feel like the backdrop because it feels like the core uh, most enjoyable product there is chatting with 400 other people and cheering people on, like you say. That's a good observation.
Yep.
Do you get on the? Do you hop in that chat like Cocodona? Are you in there
Oh
or is
yeah.
that you are?
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that I can do, to connect as a fan of the sport. Yeah, I definitely enjoy it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's fun.
So when I think still more about like the professionalization of it, thinking about the foam fingers waving, like all the pride that people would take in it, I think, and this is not a new thought to me. Way back in the day, chatting with Finn Melanson offline, like he had talked about this a lot, but is like a sense of place, the runner being tied to a sense of place. So for me, like, again, I think like a sports fan. So I love my Utah runners, my runners who live in Utah. I like them a lot. Mike McMonagle, Shit in the Woods, Leah Yangling. Now that Dakota Jones lives there, he's a Utah guy to me, so I cheer him on. Rachel Drake lives there now. I cheer her on. Tyler Green, obviously. And they leave, they're dead to me. I do not care about them. I literally, if they go, like when Hayden Hawks moved from Utah to Boulder, literally he was dead to me. And since he came back, I'm a Utah fan, so here he is. I think what's missing is like Jim being tied to a place, and
Hmm.
like local French people, like oh, he lives in France, that's cool. But I think a massive money making opportunity would be to tie people to a sense of place, and then if Jim Walmsley is the kid from Phoenix and he's on like some sort of version of a Phoenix team or something that allows local Phoenix runners to buy the jersey. Like I'm just looking for a way for there to become a jersey that people start to take pride in these runners and own these runners. Like I owned the Texas Rangers, or when I, living in Dallas, owned the Cowboys. Like I owned them. I think that's one of our barriers right now, is that in, probably any soul sport. I don't see this happening in mountain biking or anything, but I want to own them. And I do that naturally. That's just how I think, like with Utah runners, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea. I think it's just, God, it just seems so hard to create a team environment in a individual sport.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't like, it's not a team sport, it's individuals out
Yeah.
there running, I mean, I still remember Coconino Cowboys. I mean, I bought
Yeah.
everything that I could that had that logo on
Mm.
it and the
I didn't know
script. I
they made
mean, that,
apparel and stuff. That's cool.
yeah, so they were doing like, like kind of just like the regular stuff where you can print the logo and ship it. It wasn't anything, too
Sure.
crazy, but they definitely, saw the opportunity and, put some stuff out there. They had a cool like mesh hat, said like bang bang, which was their like the saying on it. I mean, yeah, like they had a bunch of cool stuff. Squirrel's
Yeah.
Nut Butter had the Coconino Cowboy,
Mm.
lube that they came out with. So I think maybe something like that could be done, where you just get these even if it's not a team, just these guys who like like Boulder Boys. I mean, I think that's kind of developing
Yeah.
into something neat for them.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be up to the runners themselves to do this. I don't think, the brands or the events like UTMB or Western States have anything to gain off of it necessarily. So the runners
Yeah.
have to activate themselves and do it.
As we're building out the race that we do in Salt Lake, the Salt Lake Foothills, I really wanted to have a component where it was like, okay, I mean, I don't have the street cred with the elite runners in Salt Lake. I mean, because I'm somewhat critical of elite running, and I don't believe that brands sponsoring ultra runners is long-term sustainable unless things that we talked about, or the professionalization of the sport progresses. So sponsoring an athlete, I often talk about like that's a marketing expense, that's a tactic, and if that's not eventually there's not eventually getting a return on that investment, that might slow. And so because of that, I don't really have the ear of the all those names I just named in Salt Lake. But I wanted for our race to put like, hey, could I get like 5 of these local runners to wear a Salt Lake jersey? And then we just talk so much shit about Boulder and uh the Arizona, Northern Arizona state. What am I thinking of?
NAU, yeah,
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 that, I mean,
NAU, yeah, and
yeah,
Flagstaff,
like
yeah.
Flagstaff. Yeah, just like, could we just talk shit and then see if we can get like 5 of their best runners to put a jersey on? And then, you know, this wasn't about making my race like more people come to it. It's just like, hey, is this a place where I could like do that, to get that sense of place? So yeah, someone has to invest in it whose return is good feelings and not not money.
Right,
But it would be fun
yeah.
to see the Boulder Boys racing, Anthony Costales and all of our great Salt Lake runners with their jerseys on. I'd buy that shirt from that weekend because I'm a I'm proud of Salt Lake City.
Yeah, you're an entrepreneur. Just find a
I
way to
know.
make that singlet. I'm sure it'll probably it'll
I
hit.
know.
I think
I
just the first
Yeah, yeah.
person that does it is going to make success off of it.
Yeah. And I would love to be that person, or if that person starts to do it, I want to lean into and help them however I can. You know, I want to see a cool Salt Lake logo with, Yangling on the back or whatever. So I think that's cool.
Right. Why do you think Hoka hasn't come out with a Walmsley shoe? Why would they not do that?
I don't know. Cause
Yeah.
I mean, is the Speed Goat, is that what he's wearing? I mean, I can't even keep up with it. I'm not like a huge gearhead. I saw that limited release black Hoka shoe from Western States. Was that a Speed Goat shoe?
No, that's the Hoka Tecton. So it's a different
Okay.
high performance carbon plate type of shoe, but it just always Hoka to me always seemed like, they were sitting on a national treasure within trail running, with
Yeah.
Jim, and they don't really they don't do much. I feel like, Wahoo, his watch and his bike trainer does more with great content
Yeah.
than what Hoka's done in the past. So
Here's one thought from a business perspective on the professionalization of it. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of, at least on some level, the deal that Michael Jordan did with Nike and the royalty on that. If all of a sudden a shoe says Jim Walmsley's name on it, I think his price tag just got more expensive. So,
yeah,
and would they sell more? Maybe. I think a case could be made for they would sell the exact same amount as they currently sell, or there would be a bump. I think from unnamed sources, the Carl Meltzer deal with Speedgoat was a freaking amazing deal. It was before, I mean, who could have guessed? Just like with Jordan, probably to some degree, who would have guessed that success? Like
right.
the Carl's success with the Speedgoat shoe is commensurate with Jordan's in terms of market size. Trail running's not very big, but that's a big shoe, and he gets paid a royalty off of that. And I think maybe that's what they're avoiding. That's just a guess.
Yeah, probably. So just good stuff. Yeah, we'll see. I
Yeah,
mean, the professionalization still, like we said, I think, and we'll touch on it a little bit more, has a long way to go.
yeah,
Um, and I think, and we're talking about it from a trail running perspective, but it transcends that and goes into road marathoning, and, the Olympics just happened. I mean,
hmm,
these guys aren't killing it, with their income for the type of thing that they're doing.
right, yeah. I mean, so on this level, like, we're talking about money moving and contracts, and I mean, implicit like contracts increasing, or how does a trail runner make money? Well, as you pointed out to me in the article you shared, UTMB did just double their purse for the event. And if you were to ask me before I read that article, and before I kind of knew a little bit of what I knew, that they don't pay much,
Right.
before I had learned that they didn't pay much, if you would have asked me like, hey, I would have guessed a lot more that the winner of that would have gotten a lot more, especially having been to the race, seeing the massive scope and scale, the number of people, 10,000 runners, 30,000 crew members, one spectator, me. Um, so, like there's so much money moving around there, and it's wild to me that the purses are so low. So what can, bring some color to that? Like what's the purse like now for UTMB?
Yeah, and I think everybody's kind of probably in this same mindset. Now, I thought that their prize pool was going to be less than it actually was for this year. So
Mm,
I'm celebrating UTMB because they're
yeah.
taking steps in the right direction and they're not
Hmm.
moving slowly. They are doubling over last year and trying to quickly kind of catch up to maybe what Ironman, the
Hmm.
traditional event, is doing. So yeah, this
Yeah.
year I think it's 300,000 USD for total prize pool across the three races: UTMB, OCC, and CCC. So 300,000, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
decent chunk of change. It's
That's real
nowhere
money.
else to be found. Yeah, nowhere
Yeah.
else to be found in trail running right now. So
Yeah.
they're moonshotting the rest of the trail running as far as prize money goes.
Yeah. And so, okay. So chase this trail with me. Last year, the Gary Robbins debacle elevator version is that UTMB moved into Gary Robbins' neighborhood in Vancouver or in BC, Canada, and hurt his ability to have his race, and then UTMB got their race in there. And then all of a sudden, everybody was really upset with UTMB for doing that. Do you think there's a correlation between the damage that UTMB did to their brand? I don't think it's as bad as some people thought the damage was, and also as someone whose background is PR, time kind of heals some wounds, not all of them. So do you think there's a correlation between what happened in BC with the doubling of the prize money? Because some people like Jim and all these other runners were like, we're never going to run UTMB again. We're going to find another race, and because we're going to be there, that will become the de facto World Series. Do you see a connection here in your brain, or do you think I'm reaching?
I don't know. I think you're probably reaching. I don't
Yeah.
think necessarily that UTMB's prize pool was a way to distance or distract people from the earlier missteps.
Or to pull the elite runners back?
No, I mean, I don't think so. Because again, you're only talking, I think it's 22,000 for the winners of UTMB and OCC and CCC. So, I mean, 20,000, I mean, that's not a small chunk of change.
Sure.
But I mean, if you morally were sitting on a high ground saying, I don't like UTMB morally, I think that's enough money to still, if you're Jim or some of these other guys who are making a living, to still pass on and make a statement of the event. But I don't think, I think the American runners were the ones who were most up in arms, and Canadian, obviously, North American runners, about the handling of, the BC. And it came on the heels of the Corinne departure as well. So there were a string of events that took place. Momentum was building for this kind of anti-FUTMB type of sentiment. And then I think time's passed, and I think, time heals all wounds. And I think both sides have come together and moved forward. So I think the prize pool is just a natural progression for UTMB's business model. I think, I hope to see it increase again next year as they continue to ramp up as a serious professional event and more in line with their Ironman partners and what their events put on.
Yeah. I mean, I think of, Run Rabbit Run had a huge purse there for a while. Maybe they still do.
And they can't get anybody.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I mean, I no disrespect to those who do go and get it, but unless it's a Salt Lake runner, like my local guy, Jesse Rich, he shoots for Run Rabbit Run. Great runner. I love him as a person in general. I don't always recognize the names who get that big purse. And so maybe to your point, which was counter to my point, is that purse is nice, but it's not the draw.
Yeah, because I think Run Rabbit Run competes directly with UTMB. I don't think you can't do both, right? I think the way that the calendars work, you can't do both. And so you're right, you don't get the upper echelon. I mean, very talented runners. We're not throwing shade at all to anybody who goes out there and runs Run Rabbit Run and wins. I mean, these are incredible athletes and stuff. But again, the prize pool there, I was always frustrated with, if you want to be a professional runner, you want the professional side to grow, go support a race that's got a crazy good prize pool at the time. And nobody seemed to really go in, big waves there.
Yeah, because if our top 3 men and top 3 women, even globally, let's just say North American, made that a priority, then every other race would have had to follow suit. I don't know what RVIPA is paying out for winning Black Canyons. I don't know, but what is that true? Nothing?
Yeah, no, there's no prize money. I believe if you get a golden ticket, they will pay your entry fee to Western States, which was celebrated because I think, it's $450 or $500. So they'll pay your entry fee for Western States, but there is no check.
Okay. Well, that's wild. Okay. I wasn't expecting that. So, if we look at, now we know Black Canyons pays $0. If they had all prioritized, let's run those races. Let's reciprocate to these races gratitude, and we will go there and run those because, hey, we could make a career off of winning 2 or 3 of these a year. Then more would have followed suit. But what Run Rabbit Run did do was prove the inverse. Money doesn't get these athletes, which then makes it, you look at what motivates trail running athletes on average. What is the motivation? Like they're obviously, Jim's an amazing competitor. Like he's a competitor's competitor. Any sport that he would have been in, he reminds me a little bit of Michael Jordan, minus the shit talking, which I would love to see a little bit more of. He's a competitor's competitor, and the money doesn't draw him. So maybe it's just prestige, and Run Rabbit Run couldn't get the prestige that UTMB gives. And so maybe that's it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times the way I understand these contracts, just from being a fan of the sport and listening to podcasts, is that the footwear brand, because I mean that's honestly where the big money's coming from for these guys right now. Footwear
Yeah.
brands build in incentives into contracts, and so they incentivize the elite runners to go run certain races. And then if you
Mm.
perform well, if you win, if you get a
Oh.
course record, you're going to get a bigger paycheck, right? And so Run Rabbit Run, they
Hmm.
probably get zero
Yeah.
incentive from their big brands to go there. So
Good
it's
point.
just a big risk for them.
Very good point. Because I think, okay, now that I see Jim's shoes are Hoka and that Hoka is the title sponsor of UTMB, they want him there. The visibility. Okay, I would love to know what their marquee, whether it be shoe, mostly shoe, like you say, what their payout is for the win. Because you're exactly right. Maybe they get $50,000, whatever, at Run Rabbit Run, but their brand is their sponsor, their key marquee sponsor. You've now just given away your one, maybe 200 milers that you can run in a whole year to a place that has no media visibility. So you have
Right.
not helped your brand, your title sponsor. So yeah, that's a great point. I want, in any of the stuff that content you consumed or heard, do you know like realistically how big some of those payouts could be from a Hoka or something like that?
No, no, nothing that I would, yeah, feel comfortable or confident
Sure.
saying is accurate, right?
Yeah.
Like I have no idea. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Oh man, that's interesting. So
But again, back to the prize money,
yeah.
I think it's worth sitting on a little bit just to really, digest. 300,000 is how
Yeah.
much the
Yeah.
prize, and
Yeah.
it's equal payouts for men and women. It
Yeah.
goes top 10, so top 10 are going to get some kind of payout. It's 20,000 euro to 1,500 euro from first to 10th,
Got
and
it.
it goes for three races. So whether you run the 100-mile UTMB distance or you run the 55K distance, you're going to still get payouts first through 10th. And I looked it up too because Ironman being its own event organization, they have events too, right? So like St. George, I looked up one in your backyard. So St.
Yeah.
George, Utah has like a 70.3 Ironman, and it was like you got 12K to 1K for prize pool from first through 10th. So I thought, okay, I said, here's our trail championship at UTMB
Mm-hmm.
on par with a regional Ironman event. I'm not too upset about that. That's pretty impressive that
Yeah.
we have something that we can even point to in the Ironman space and say we're actually paying our top athletes similar prize pool.
Yeah.
Where it skews dramatically is that Ironman just came out with a like $1.7 million championship race. So Kona now, these guys get a $200,000 bonus if they win that race. And so maybe that's the growth area, is to turn UTMB into a Kona event where they can
Yeah.
start making a couple 100,000, and all these other feeder events in the UTMB series can become like your St. George, Utah, where you're getting 10,
Yes.
12,000 to win that one. And now you can build the season around prize pool money.
Yeah. Yeah, man. So then think of the growth for that athlete who by the time that's fully developed, I don't know who that would be. Maybe Adam Peterman might be at the very top. We can talk about that some other time. But
Right.
whoever gets to be the recipient of not only the A race, but all being something that pays out, but all your qualifiers are paying out along the way. You're exactly right. Like that's a trajectory to a good career. I'm not saying what exists currently isn't good, or at least they're not happy or happy or unhappy. But that is a model, like you're saying, for like real money. That's real. That's great. That's cool.
Yep. So were
I
you
wonder.
surprised when
Oh,
you
go ahead.
saw the prize pool? I'm just curious, were you surprised when you saw how much UTMB was paying out this year across the three events?
Yeah. Okay. First, yes, as a dollar amount, 300,000. Surprised. My mind instantly went to why are they paying it out?
Hmm.
And not even thinking from a PR perspective. Now I'm thinking from a finance perspective. 300,000. How'd they come up with that number? And why? Like, what do they need to get? What are they hoping to get out of it? Because if runners are running it not incentivized by the purse, they're running it for the clout. What are they going to get out of that money? Because for their investors, whoever determined that, they have to justify that $300,000 to their investors. Like, we're going to go from 150 to 300,000. My guess is that there's a marketing tactic in there, like, two nobodies chatting about it on a podcast. Like they're getting some good value out of this because people are people are impressed. The 2x of prize purse is impressive. It makes me wonder what the total revenue is of the event to see how much pressure they're putting on that prize money to perform for them. So if the event only is a $3 million event, 10% as a marketing tactic, that's they need a lot out of that money. But I'm guessing it's much larger than 3 million. Let's just say sponsorship. I mean, I'm shooting from the hip. Sponsorships, all that, being in Chamonix, all the revenue swirling around there. Let's say it's a 10 million. Well, 3 million or 300,000 all of a sudden they're not putting as much pressure on it, but it still has to perform. And if it doesn't give them what they want, I'm curious if it goes any further. But because of Ironman's involvement, which I'm now a little bit optimistic about now that I've done a little bit of a deep dive into Ironman, from getting to see Copenhagen firsthand, and I like it. Ironman's proven something. Like, an optimistic take on Ironman's involvement is that they've commercialized a soul sport at scale, and UTMB gets to be the recipient of what they have learned the hard way. I'm not saying we don't have stuff to learn the hard way in UTMB. So my guess is then, as I overthink the $300,000, is that there's a precedent within Ironman that said that's the number that gets people to talk about it, but it's not the number where if that gets us no coverage, gets us no goodwill, then we're no worse for the wear.
Right. Yeah, totally. I think, yeah, exactly. I think it was a risk mitigation, right? Like, let's get out ahead of the negative chatter, right? It's one less thing that they have to worry about people critiquing them on now because they've done it. And I think it's a number that they're not going to feel pressure to increase next year, which is kind of, good or bad, right? But I think even if they kept it the same next year, we would still give them some patience to grow into a larger prize pool. Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, like, it's progressive. Like, they're moving, they're trying things, they're doing something. Like, and to that, like, if that's the spirit that they remain in, I think we're all going to be better for it as fans of the sport. Like, if they're willing to progress, if they're saying like, hey, this is so bad that we're going to 2x it. And, I just wonder, for one thing that we see, as the optimist that I am, I'm hoping that there's maybe 2 or 3 things that we're not seeing that are better as well. Now, the pessimist in me is like, is it rope-a-dope? Like, hey, look over here, look at all this prize money. By the way, I just hope that you don't see this. Like, and I don't know what that could be. There could be something that, that's how PR works. Look over there, look at the shiny thing over there, so we can dust this under the rug. But the optimist, I prefer to just be the optimist here and say, hopefully they keep tweaking things and it keeps getting even better.
I agree. Yeah. And you're going to always have the dissenting voices that, they just don't want UTMB, or they just don't want change and growth. And you're never probably going to win those folks over. So I'm sure there'll be those who are boycotting UTMB this year in their way, and, kudos to them. And, the sport's big enough, I think, to have dissenting parties for certain events and still carry on and grow forward.
Yeah. Last year, if I recall, the protest was around, I don't even know how to say it. Dacia, the car company. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
One of those.
Dacia or something like that.
Yeah. A carbon emitting entity being a sponsor for a trail. There were a lot of people that were upset about that. And I couldn't bring myself to care. My perspective was, wow, a company that large, like, when you go from endemic sponsors like Hoka to non-endemic like Ford, that says something about where we're going. And I read it as, my goodness, that's crazy that they were able to get a non-endemic sponsor to be title. Like, I don't know how much they dropped on it. And I don't know why they dropped them this year, if there was a business case, if it was a PR case, but I don't think they're around anymore.
No, Hoka, I think, slid in and took over the major presenting sponsor, if I'm understanding it correctly.
I think you're right. That sounds familiar.
Yeah. Let's just hope it didn't scare off other major brands from feeling like this sport is, too much of a gatekeeper on, certain moral high grounds or certain sort of, social matters that, some sponsors just aren't welcome to come and support this event. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so as I start to ride this train of like, excitement and optimism. There's this other part of me, like the other, like the devil on the other shoulder is just like, you're selling out, man. Like, don't forget about that 100-person local race. Is there anywhere in your mind where a growing monster of a UTMB in any way hurts the dirtbag local 100 miler? Like, does everything rise, or is there anything that you see that impacts it negatively?
I mean, I don't see how it could negatively impact the United States local trail race. Um, Again, I just think positive attention or negative attention is still eyeballs on the sport.
Yeah.
And if you want to go run a 100-miler, UTMB shouldn't discourage you from going out to go run a 100-miler. So I can't see how there's any negativity where it's actually going to cause the sport from continuing to grow or give people a bad taste in their mouth when they do go run their local 100-miler. Like, it's out of sight, out of mind. I mean, if you're not running UTMB, like, you're not even thinking about it when you're running your event.
I don't know if Arizona has a UTMB race, does it, that you know of?
No, I think the closest would be like Speed Goat out there.
Okay. That's what I was going to say. Like, Speed Goat has been nothing but good for the scene. Like, it has in no way negatively impacted our scene. It has actually elevated it in terms of energy. There's so much energy around that race, and all the people who've been running it, like, I haven't been around forever, but I ran it, and I think in 17 and 18 and 19. It's great. I'm in no way turned off by it's probably much like politics. Like, when people are asked how much they hate Congress, they're like, "Oh, Congress is the worst." But how much do you like your own congressman or woman? Like, "Oh, I love him. He's incredible."
Right.
Like, Speed Goat is like, I have zero problem with it. In fact, Carl's still involved. Buddy Pete Stofton, who is Carl's right-hand man forever at Speed Goat, it's, he's still there. And he's the course director. Now he's employed by UTMB, making more money. So yeah, as like that, I just think it's a net positive. It's hard to see a drawback. There is the get off my lawn kind of person who doesn't like it, is going to find something negative. And I could, if they were here, if there was a third person here who was on the negative bus, I could ride that bus for a little bit just because I like to get critical.
Right.
But I just can't see a downside. And I just this year, I just want to be a fan. I just want to love it and celebrate it.
I mean, the negatives is just the event itself. Like, I don't think, I'm never going to go run UTMB Chamonix probably. It's just, that's a very expensive thing for an American citizen to go do.
Yes.
Like, the travel, the event, the room and board, like, it's probably just outside of my budget, So I don't think I'll ever go run the event. And then when I see some of the film, like Jamil has put out some good GoPro cam footage of him running. And when you see what the experience is for the mid packers, it's a conga line. It doesn't necessarily look kind of as enchanting as you see the elites bombing down there by themselves. Like, I don't know if I would like always being around 400 other runners for 100-milers. Like, it does kind of look like it loses some of the charm of a 100-miler when you're just in a conga line for 50 miles.
Yeah, I interviewed a woman named Amanda Klatt who was, bottom 50% of the pack, and she was like, "Yeah, if you're the introvert who loves, the set point of separation, this is not the race for you. You are always surrounded by people." So this is an important, probably one of the more important things in my mind of like distinguishing between. A lot of times we talk about in trail, hey, it's so cool. We actually get to toe the line with Jim. We're at the same starting line as Courtney. Like, isn't that so cool? Now, on the other hand, it's like, there's two different events happen. Like, there's two different sports to some degree happening. What Jim and Courtney are doing is very different than my 42-hour finish at that race. I mean, if I were to ever run it. Having everybody on the same starting line, like at a UTMB, you said something brilliant to me via text at one point of what if we just surrendered Western states and let it just be the elite thing, and all of us middle and back of the packers just spectated and enjoyed it and went on and ran other races. is UTMB a bet like the event, the main event in Chamonix as a participant? Is it better off just being an elite race? What do you think?
I mean, so there's two different environments here that have big impacts, and that's the permitting. So UTMB, I guess, doesn't have any type of limitation because the amount of participants that can run the course is endless. Whereas Western States is dealing with, you know, a hard number, right? What is it, like 360, 380, whatever it is that can run that event. And so, like, my answer is no. Like, UTMB can still be this like great, you know, event for everyone to go participate, and you just know what you're getting into. You know, it's going to be a conga line, and it's going to be, you know, the aid stations are going to be a madhouse from the time you go, and it's not going to separate at mile 50.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think we need to just throw UTMB into a championship series only, but Western States is different because you only get limited spaces. You know, if Western States didn't have that cap, then I wouldn't even suggest that. But, you know, I always say I want to see, you know, as many elite runners run the premier races that get the most focus and live coverage. And I don't want to sacrifice the elite end of it so more mid-packers like myself can go participate in that event.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know what it means. Like, as a competitor myself coming from different sports, like, I don't even know what that saying means. Like, I get to toe the line with Jim. You don't actually. Like, you don't even see them. You know what I mean? Like, that's such a fantasy in your head. Like, if you're, a lot of times they have starts for people that are later than the sub 24 hour people. So you're not even towing the line figuratively or literally with them.
Yeah.
And even if you are, you're probably like 100 meters behind where the elite field is at, you know? Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
That's
a good point. I went to spectate the 2019 Western States, and that was the year that Jim got the course record of 1409, and Jared Hazen got the course record, 1420 something. And I just wanted to be there, and so I got in position and wanted to see the start. And Jim doesn't even come out until like 60 seconds before, and it's a big to do. Like, it's very ceremonial, the emergence of Jim.
As it should be. I think we should have better walkouts for these guys. You know what I mean? Like, it should be something like the UFC. It should be something like, track kind of does it a little bit. Yeah, they need to have walkouts.
Oh, dude. I mean, that's a really great idea. I can't, some of these guys seem a little dorky. I don't know what their music choice would be, but I think a fantastic topic would be to give everyone their walkout music. What are they coming out to? I don't know. Jim's I just can't imagine it being like super cool. But you're right. I think that would be like, I'd like that a lot.
Yeah.
Man, there's so much other stuff we could talk about. Like, I think we're going to miss Corinne this year as a commentator. There was drama surrounding that. But and we might be able to get to that still in another episode. But for here, just in the final minutes here, are you geeking out already on the field? Do you have hopes? Not like, you don't have to be strategic about it. Who do you want to see win this year? Like, are you that into it already? Like, who's your pick for men and who's your pick for women on the main event?
Yeah, I'll definitely start getting more into it as they get more of the athlete interviews and the standard media that surrounds a big race like this. I'm sure we'll hear Free Trail and Finn on single track and everybody else doing their little 35-minute check-ins with all the best, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I want to see Jim go back and defend his championship, right? They say you're not a champion until you defend your title, and I definitely want to see him go in and go back to back and really cement his legacy there. And I mean, I think it sounds like he's really committed to this UTMB race. Obviously, with Hoka being his premium sponsor, it makes sense for him. So he might be coming back, every year for this thing.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to see him kind of get one or two more so he can really make his case as, a true competitor at the 100-mile distance with Killian and Francois and Xavier. So I want to see him go back to back.
Yeah, I love that. I would love. I mean, I want it to be Jim for sure. I want it to be Jim and Katie. I like Katie Scheid a lot. She lived in Salt Lake City for a little bit, and was already a fan. But then I learned that she went to grad school at the University of Utah and did a lot of trail running while she was there. And I mean, and of course, I want Jim. And the only thing that I think would be a cooler storyline, it would be mind blowing to think if Jermaine Grangier and Katie, being husband and wife, could also both win. I mean, I like that storyline, even though I want my two Americans at the top of the podium. And I want it to be those two Americans at the top of the podium.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're guaranteed some sort of, great storyline. I mean, the race just, for some reason, the way the course is set up with that last 50K, it's just, we're going to see something exciting happen.
Yeah.
And it's going to be just, was it something we predicted or something that we totally didn't see coming out of right field?
Yeah. And then, I'm not as familiar with the CCC field. did I see Hayden Hawks' name on there? Like, I feel like we've got some of our other great runners running the shorter distance. Anthony Costales was going to do CCC. He got injured in a race that he ran in Spain, so had to go home. But there's some, other great. I think there's gonna be some great storylines come out of CCC as well, and Americans having a good chance of podiuming there.
Yeah, I think we'll follow up on actual names that we're interested in. I haven't dove into the field yet just because the start list is always fluid, so you got to give it time to kind of settle in.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sure whoever's on there now should be, committed. But
yeah,
what I like about the 3 races is that it used to be where there was always this and this is what I like about the sport and how it's changing for the better, is that you used to see like OCC and CCC just be simply stepping stones that you would use to get to UTMB.
Yes.
They're becoming championship races on their own, and guys and girls are starting to become not specialists, but they're starting to really hone in at the distance. And you're not considered like a B champion if you win OCC or CCC, like I think it was in years past, or you're not expected to be asked like, well, when are you going to go run UTMB now? Like, these are just champions, and there's no kind of, comma or ... for them to go take on the full circumnavigation.
That's a good perspective. Because if I think about what do I actually myself want to go run someday, I don't, after really doing a deep dive into the main event, I don't actually want to run that. I'd love to go do the OCC. That to me would feel like peak, like self-actualization, because I'd also get to still enjoy Chamonix and all of that and enjoy all the pomp and circumstance. But to name those races as destinations in and of themselves instead of stepping stones, I think that's the perfect thing to end on, because I think that that's just a great insight into the race. And whether or not we get to talk about all the rest of this stuff, Brian, it's great to have you join today. Like, this was, world-class conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Yeah, sure, man. Look forward to more conversations.
Yep. Me too. Let's do it again.
All right, man.
See you.